tonight. I'll start with Pamela Mburia, the chairperson of the Association of Media, Kenya Media, Association of Media Women in Kenya. I should get it right. Thank you for joining us, and a career journalist, has been for years. It's good to have you on the panel tonight. And next to her is Charles Kerich. He is the managing editor at The Star and also relevant to this conversation, the chairperson at the Media Council of Kenya. Many complaints have been coming his way this week, and I believe the previous week as well. Jerry Thorne, she's a communication strategist, and she calls herself now latest Mama Bora, and she'll tell us why later. David Ohito, the man who says people have spoken kuri kuri last time he was here. Thank you very much for joining us after a short while. He is the digital editor at the Standard Group. And I did talk to Jeff Koinange. He is out of the country moderating an international session, so he won't be able to join us tonight. Now, if you didn't watch it live, you probably have watched various uploaded versions of the Jeff Koinange live show that aired on KTN and KTN News on Wednesday. It was a platform for Nairobi gubernatorial aspirants to debate and show what they have to offer for the county. The debate that went slightly over an hour got quite confrontational between the two aspirants, and here is a snippet.
She's selling beauty. She thinks beauty gives you credibility and integrity to go for leadership. Esther Passaris is nothing but a flower girl.
Esther, I'm going to give you 1 minute to respond real quick.
Yeah.
He says you're a flower girl.
Let me tell you something. I lit Nairobi. On his website, I'm told he says he's going to be the light of Nairobi. As far as I'm concerned, Nairobi is already lit. The guy is absolutely ignorant. He comes here and he thinks he can bash everybody. By the way, have you received an email from my lawyer?
Why don't you ask your lawyer?
Okay, here is the letter.
Why don't you?
Here is the letter served.
And just to put the record straight, this is not an attack on Jeff Koinange, career journalist who I respect, or is it an attack on KTN or the Standard Group, but it is an endpoint to discuss gender sensitivity across all media houses. We have been at the accused end of not being gender sensitive. Now, this is especially on a week when the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence starts. That is on Friday, November the 25th. This is an effort by the international community to raise public awareness and mobilize people everywhere to bring about change. And after this conversation, of course, there was a lot of reaction. Since that interview aired, the Youth and Gender Affairs Cabinet Secretary Cicely Kariuki accused the station of encouraging gender-based attacks. The CS said comments online following this discussion show how far as a society and also the Kenya media still has to go in changing the attitudes as a nation towards gender-based violence. The Association of Media Women in Kenya also condemned the manner in which the live show was handled, threatening to boycott all programs and stations that continue to disrespect women. Several complaints were also filed with the Media Council of Kenya, and we have the chairman here, as I mentioned earlier. I'll start with Chairman Charles Kerich. First of all, what you made of what happened on Wednesday. If you didn't catch it live, you probably saw this. But as a journalist, as you were watching this debate, it was an hour, 12 minutes, perhaps a little over that. As a journalist, first of all, with all the reaction that's been coming our way.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that this is a classical case of ethics in journalism.
Okay.
This is the kind of thing that you are taught about in your first year of journalism class. The unfortunate thing, I think, I'm not very familiar with the professional and educational background of the host of that show. I know he's had high-profile jobs with international media, but we find that there is a tendency for many media houses to get somebody who has a nice voice, give them a voice test, put them on air. Before long, they are running shows. Before long, they are out in the field with microphones, and so they are self-taught. And there's nothing wrong with journalists being self-taught. We have seen, even here in this media house, people come as TV presenters. Within a short time, they are out there with microphones, producing their own stories. Self-teaching in journalism is okay. But there are basics that you must learn, which you might not be able to learn in the field. You actually need to be in a classroom to learn, and those basics include ethics. And ethics, you know, it's like this matatu driver who goes for squad driving the matatu. Before long, he's a driver. But he doesn't know the highway code. He doesn't know that you should not accelerate when somebody is overtaking. You know, so it is the same thing where you get somebody who then becomes a prolific journalist, but does not have the basics. And I think what happened was a classical case of ethics in journalism, and I think that's from where it should be interrogated.
All right, and I'll ask you about the complaints that have come your way and how it will be handled moving forward. Bwana David Ohito, you're from the Standard Group, and I mean, this is not the first show that Jeff has hosted, the first show that has been hosted on the station. And I mean, there's been a lot of praise and accolade to what he's done previously, and this particular case has been a lot of criticism. Do you feel in your response that this is proportionate to what actually came out of the show, the reactions?
Well, I think Kenyans are very emotional sometimes, and reactions go beyond the facts that happened. And I would challenge those who are critiquing and criticizing the content to go and preview the content they did. As a media house, the Standard Group had concerns, very genuine ones, internally, and we have taken what we called internal mechanisms, and which is why we brought down the content on the online version.
Right.
And we have since issued an apology that went to individuals who were concerned. That is the best in professional practice.
Yes.
However, we must not outlive the fact that we live in a digital era, and there are things that we call digital footprints. Once you put that content on a digital platform, you stop owning it, and people plagiarize, reproduce that content fairly, unfairly, and have shared the same content, and we are trying to address that.
Okay.
In terms of the ethics, I would not want to attack Jeff Koinange, but I want to remind the viewers here and anybody else interested that there are ways TV stations work. One includes outsourcing credible people to produce content, and then you simply air. And that is how Jeff Koinange's show came to KTN. I want to clarify again that Jeff Koinange is not in the rank and file of the staff of the Standard Group.
Okay.
But the management of the Standard Media Group has taken decisions which it will be following, both administratively and, as I have said, bringing down that content online.
All right. But it is still online because of the footprints, as you've mentioned. I'd like to broaden this conversation, and it's not, as I said, about Jeff Koinange necessarily or KTN, because in the immediate release that you had out, and I'm talking about Amwick, Pamela, you, in the last sentence, you say, we look forward to respectful engagement going forward. Otherwise, we will call for a boycott of all the programs and stations that constantly disrespect women. Obviously, this refers to not only KTN, but other stations. What have you observed then over time?
Let me just mention what the initial question, and it's about what does one do when the show, like the one we saw there, took place. And we may not be attacking Jeff Koinange per se, but the ethical thing is really to moderate a show, and the show didn't seem to be moderated at all from what we saw there.
Okay.
So it looked like Jeff could have just shoved the mic and let the people just, keep attacking one another, which really is something that we need to come to terms with in terms of what Kerich has mentioned, the chairman of the Media Council, about journalists and self-training. When you self-train, are you aware of the ethics, how to moderate shows, so that you don't inflame emotions, so that you don't necessarily attack other people on air, so that the hosts are not allowed to just go on, and instead of inspiring or informing the audience,
yes,
the show becomes something else. And that's what we are saying as media women in Kenya, as Amwick. We can do better. There have been massive resources spent on training journalists, on training women how to work with the media, and for journalists how to be gender sensitive in their reporting. If we are not making a difference today after more than 10 years of working with the media and thinking that we are getting to do a better job, And this coming especially during elections. We are getting into a very volatile period.
Okay.
The best we can do is for all journalists to be very sensitive. Boycotting may not be the solution, but if it comes to the worst, I mean, we could say, let's not support the media houses which are doing a disservice to the women of the country, in this country, not just to the women, but those who seem not to be doing the job that they should be doing.
Okay.
That's what we are seeing as Amwake.
And as you respond, Njeri, to how this has been received generally, the CS for Youth and Gender Affairs says that the comments that followed this particular interview showed that Kenya as a society has still a ways to go in changing the attitudes as a nation towards gender-based violence. In society, of course, this includes media. What are your thoughts?
I think we go back to the question as to whether media shapes society or media is a reflection of society. That's one of the questions we have to ask ourselves. But we're also working on the premise that what went on was wrong, in that we've concluded that there was gender bias, it was based on gender. Maybe it's us as a society that have a gender lens, because it was a political debate, there will be insults exchanged. Maybe it's us who decided to then make it a gender issue, because Esther Passaris did throw the first jab, he retaliated in the same way. What they did do, which was wrong, was trivialize rape, but both of them did it. She used it as a tool to expose him, and he went further and did so.
So you're saying, I mean, it's bound to get dirty, especially as we
it
get
is
into
bound to get dirty. And if we're
2017
then going
elections.
to use the gender card and say you can't say that to a woman, then it's not equality we're looking for, it's equity, that there's some things you can say to a woman and some things you can't. Whereas in politics and leadership, you have to expect, when you get in there, you will be rolling with, in the pigsty, and you do expect mud thrown at you. I did revise my position when I saw what transpired in the break. I think there was a lot of misogyny. It was no longer, he took it a step further.
Yes.
Initially, I thought it was all's fair in love and war, in that all gloves were off. She used the line of rape to accuse him, and he came back using her history and context to accuse her. With her, it was slander per se, because she was accusing him of a crime on national TV. And of course, for a politician, something like that is fatalistic. So he did react emotionally, but it was within context. She has made accusations. So initially, I thought, yes, it's punch for punch. But when I saw, the next morning, I saw the clip that the exchange that happened during the break. And with that, he did go further, and it did become a gender issue.
A gender issue. As you mentioned, Bwana Ohito, that Kenyans are really emotional, and she brings up something. Jerry brings up something that we can expect in the year to come, 2017. The gloves are off. People, bring their worst and their best in terms of facts or rumor. So when you say Kenyans are emotional, is it to tell them, put your guards on?
If you ask me what transpired between Passaris Miguna debate, it's what happens every day. The only difference is that this was on a live TV show with a moderator. If you looked at the Bomet rally yesterday, it was attack and counter-attack on leaders. If you watched the Mombasa rally, it was the same. So actually for me, it was a mirror of the society, how low leadership has sunk in this country, that you can call people who are aspiring for the high office of the governor in Nairobi, but they do not stick to issues. They decide to jab themselves on petty matters that could be done in the bedroom or elsewhere. Then you expect the journalists to maintain that professional standards. I will accuse the Media Council chair, my good friend Kerich. On this, he should be the umpire. He should listen to the side of the journalists. What are the challenges we are facing? How do you deal with these, let me call them loose-tongued politicians who at every opportunity, they find and use unprintable words, if you like, or unsavory language. They do not inspire people. They do not show what they stand for, and there's no issueification of debates.
Someone would say, then give them a blackout.
Not a solution at all. We are part of this country. What we can do is start railroading them.
Right.
Mark, I think let's put this in context, because we need to understand that there was a show and then there was a recording that happened during the break.
Yes.
It's been hinted here, but maybe the person who is watching this debate doesn't know that that is what happened. So there was a show where words were exchanged. And then there was a break where now the real nasty stuff was received. And if you saw the letter that Miguna wrote,
Yes.
Of course, let me just remind you that the Media Council is not the one that arbitrates this kind of a dispute. We have a complaints commission, which is independent, and which is why I'm able to, as a Media Council, to comment on it. Otherwise, I would have declined.
Yes.
But because the complaints commission is independent, we can talk about it. So his letter said that he was recorded secretly, and that was a private conversation and should not have been released, which then raises a number of issues. Number one, Chapter 6 of the Constitution says that as a leader, you are liable to be scrutinized both in your public and private life. So whether it was supposed to be the break or no break really is not an issue. Those things should not have been said. But number two, whatever went on air is what the public should have viewed. How that break recording then ended up being sent out
Yes.
by the producers of that show shows that there was another issue there. Maybe it could be, I don't know, that maybe the producers of the show were looking to increase their ratings, so they want the issue to be discussed, which then reminds me of what Mr. Ohito has just talked about, that the Standard issued an apology. But I think they should go beyond issuing an apology and give an assurance that going forward, these things will not recur, for the simple reason that that show has been a repeat offender, if I may call it that way. There was a first incident where Jeff allowed Tony Gashoka to come and say very defamatory things against Jimmy Wanjigi without any evidence. It's possible what he said was true, I don't know, but he should have been challenged to provide evidence.
Right.
The next time he ambushes Boniface Mwangi in his show, you know, he calls him for a show, doesn't tell him who the other panelists are, and then Moses Kuria shows up and says, you know, I was just around here in the hotel when I saw the show. That is not ethical. You cannot call somebody for an interview, not tell them that somebody else is coming to come and counter them. Then now we have this issue where even apart from what we have seen between Pasaris and Miguna, you know, Miguna then says very, again, in my view, defamatory things against Governor Kidero. You know, this talking about money in a manner to suggest that Kidero has been involved in wrongdoing.
Right.
This is a situation where the moderator should either demand evidence or say that as a station, we don't back that. And if you're not going to provide evidence, we will ask you to withdraw.
But Jerry, you mentioned you know, gloves being taken off and things getting a bit mucky. Then this is expected even in other forums, fora, and discussions in the years and the months to come, especially going into 2017.
Yeah, I think generally politics is more personalized now than issue-based. So it's about mudslinging and tarnishing other people's names and denigration, as opposed to actually comparing and contrasting different policies and solutions for whether it's the country or the county. And we've seen that even at a national level. It's about sort of mudslinging and getting different politicians in trouble and so on. I think Jeff's show as well has gone to the dogs. I think he's enjoyed the sensationalism more than he has promoted the content.
But you're not just saying this because he hasn't invited you to be part of the
No,
show.
I
Because
wouldn't.
you've said this
I
enough
wouldn't
times
go-
on Twitter, and you've said,
When I
need
ask
to be
him
on the show, and he says,
no, I have never wanted to go on the show. He uses
really?
that. What I've done is agitate Jeff to bring women on the show on Wednesdays because they discuss politics.
Including you?
And no, I've never asked to go on the show. I have never. He uses it. He then says, you want to come on the show, as opposed to addressing the fact that he does not allow women to get involved in the political discourse.
All right.
And to me, that is normalizing, or it's keeping women out of politics. But on Thursdays, he brings women because they can elicit high emotional reactions on this inspirational Thursdays. But he never brings women to discuss politics. Other than this one time where it's gone haywire, or when it's governor, you never have women come and discuss the national discourse politically.
And I don't want to, just zero in on KTN. I mean, you've watched other.
Yeah, but Jeff's show is very influential in that it does set the agenda to a certain extent.
Yes.
And it does form opinions and values and so on. And that's why I'm keen that women get involved in the political discourse. He does give a good platform for that. Well, until recently he did.
Okay. David is smiling a bit. I'll get the reaction, and as well as Pamela, in terms of the boycott for other media houses, the threat for the same for other media houses. We want to expand this conversation to the wider media and see how to make things better, especially going into the year of election 2017. Gloves will be taken off and a lot will be happening, and it will be a big call to task actually to the media fraternity to keep things sane. Welcome back to Press Pass, and we're talking about gender sensitivity. Of course, the endpoint conversation of this has started from the Wednesday show, the Jeff Koinange live show. And as I repeat this, it's not an attack on KTN or demonizing KTN or Jeff Koinange, but using this as an opportunity to discuss gender sensitivity across the board, as it has been pointed out that the media is lagging behind in the balance. And it's come out even in stories when the stories are done. And over the break, David Ohito, you brought up something that I believe needs to be clarified as we continue with the conversation.
Sure. Let me tell you, out of this show, the brand KTN and KTN News has now come under the radar of almost everybody. And those who didn't watch the show have been trying to find out how can we watch and really get to know what happened. And what followed again was an emotional reaction, an attack on KTN and KTN News, which I felt was very unfair. If you just look at our history, the last 2 weeks, we are smarting from an American election. And what didn't US President-elect Donald Trump not say on air? You know, he uttered all manners of abuses, and even those who are commenting on the show, who watched it, are saying, Miguna is Kenya's Trump.
Yes.
The only thing he said that he's better than Trump. But he took every opportunity to attack people without providing evidence, and he called Governor Kidero names unfairly on air, which are defamatory, and I think Governor Kidero was right in sending a complaint to the good chair here.
Right, but Pamela, you had something to say in terms of this is not America.
Yeah, those are two extreme circumstances and situations. I don't think we can even get to compare the two. Because it happened there, it doesn't mean it should happen here. We are talking about using the media platform, which is got such wide reach, to disparage, issues and people, and this really shouldn't be the case. First of all, what are we talking about when we say about the kind of debate we are seeing in the media? What the politicians are talking about, the display that we are getting from them. What's the work of a journalist? I mean, that's a long discussion, a conversation for another day. But what is the responsible role that a journalist can play in such circumstances?
Yeah, let me ask this in terms of the role. I just throw this in because it's recent. And there's been many comments in asking, why did we upsound every time what the DP said about Waiguru? She's just catwalking. And it said that then this further, makes the divide or the bias against women. That term, catwalking. I'm sure you've seen that.
Precisely, my comment, that's what I was driving at. I mean, sometimes politicians issue such statements that you wonder whether it's necessary for the media to take it up. Yes, journalists report what people say, but sometimes we need to report what value are we adding to the story by, making some points. The sexist remark that was made by the DP. By the way, the following couple of days, we saw that the media took it up, one newspaper, and even did a cartoon of Waiguru and Mother Karua in a very derogatory way. What does that add to reporting when journalists do that? That really just means there is sexism in the media. We are just making fun of women. It doesn't add any value, and this is journalists whom we are talking about who need to be sensitive, is going it's likely to happen, and we are saying this cannot be allowed to go on. And that's what we are saying by boycotting. Maybe the women who are going into elections will not be turning up to these media houses.
But don't they need that airtime?
They need the airtime, yes, but they may not need the airtime in those media houses that are giving such negative, because we say any publicity is publicity, but do we need such publicity?
Yes.
If that's the case, no, that's what we are talking about now.
I'll give you time to think through the other, instances and cases that you've seen the malpractice within media houses in terms of gender balance or bias. Charles, I saw you writing down, especially when we're talking about that catwalk comment, that sexist comment, and people say, why are you echoing these concerns? But they know very well, the politicians, what would resonate perhaps with those who are listening, because they look for that reaction in terms of the smile or the laughs or the cheers. So again, to that issue of, do we reflect the society, or does the society shape us, the media, in terms of what we should show? Should we sanitize the bites that we air?
That is a very important question, which is why we say, let's report what was said. Let the public decide whether it was right or wrong. Recently, we've had the phrase catwalking used a lot. Another one that has been used a lot is flower girl.
Yes.
What does flower girl mean? That you have no substance yourself and you're just there to escort other people. We remember from as far as even the late Michuki saying that Ngilu was just good for dancing Wadhiwa Mukamba, some certain
and
kind
you see
of
you're
dance,
laughing.
Yeah, so I think they do it to get a good soundbite.
Yes.
The TV says, this is a good soundbite, let's put it to the public. Let's not be the one to decide whether to censor or use it. He said it, did he not say it?
Right.
There were 2,000 people in that rally. So even if you don't show it to the TV viewers, the other people heard it. So I think, in my view, there's really nothing wrong with, if you may call it microphoning, or just amplifying what they say, so that it's also good for the public to know what some leaders think about women.
Yes, and you make decisions on what to use, what part of this story in terms of moving forward, the whole narrative on the scandal, that he said it in the same breath. So it would really be naive of media, or would be in denial not to use such a bite. I mean, explain this, especially to those who accuse media of being sexist and promoting the same and using this particular.
I would want to say that if you look at the structure of Kenyan media, the composition, I don't know if the good chair has gender composition, but in media houses, mainstream media houses, there are more men, and therefore there's that natural bias of the male lens looking at the society. I don't know whether it's really fair to say that we overlean and we are such a patriarchal society, and therefore we miss the point. We try to give the ladies an opportunity. And I remember as many times we have invited ladies of good standing in professional fields to come to shows, and they've shied away. And that leaves an editor with no option but to do with those that can make the show run.
And those who are available.
But may I point out that there is also the opposite happening in some of the stations. And the vernacular stations are a bit of a concern when it comes to issues of ethics and gender and so on. There is a particular station from the central region where there is a lady who has or rather a presenter who has a show. And the things that sometimes go on, you wonder whether the station managers don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Because, she will say something like that men are supposed to provide, and if your man is not able to provide, he's useless.
Yes.
You're allowed to go out and stray with other men because this guy is weak and he's bogus and so on. And I think some people actually enjoy something like that. So they laugh and they call in and so on. And then it's not a one-off. So here is a situation where somebody who is probably struggling with unemployment is really being made to feel like he has no dignity at all. Yeah. This is a reverse scenario where the man is being put under so much pressure that if you don't provide, you are bogus completely and your wife can even stray.
Pamela and then Jerry.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just want to ask you, because the Media Council, you are talking about a media house that has repeatedly been doing things that are not acceptable. But rather than wait until it gets out of hand, you know, I think it's time we started taking action on media houses like this, because then that's why we are getting to where we are. If we have regulation measures and they are not being, you know, acted upon. But coming back to the issue of reporting it as it is and letting the public be the judges. Listen, the media houses take up these issues, and before you know it, it becomes, you know, the talk, the rave everywhere. And it's so much about women. We hardly hear that about men. And it's because the media, and you've rightly said, most of the journalists are men. And these are men who just are so insensitive. And I wish every media house in this country would work closely with the journalists. And these are journalists who have no idea about gender reporting. If only we could take time to work with our journalists so they can be a bit sensitive. And I'm talking about the period we are getting into.
Right.
It's not necessarily for a period. And Jeff, Mark, let me commend you for acknowledging the 16 days of activism against women. Let's not even talk about the 16 days only. This is something we should be doing progressively so that we have a media that accommodates all. A media, like you said, Ohito, that inspires, that informs the public, rather than finding fault and hitting at one another.
Jerry, I asked the question. I don't believe, I didn't get a satisfactory answer in terms of what I've heard you say before in terms of subconscious and it showing in various media platforms, whether it's a story, whether it's an article, whether it's a panel, I should say, probably in many cases. What the CS said that, you know, this shows how far as a society we have to go, and the society includes the media.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the media has a role to play, but it's not sort of the only ingredient in changing attitudes towards women. We are a patriarchal society. Women do have a hard time. There are, you know, sexual objectification of women, and this is globally. You'll find in most even movies, the protagonist or the hero is always a man, and the woman is somehow sexualized and is never given an equal footing. Also, generally, women, their lives, their personal lives they'll be more accountable for their personal lives. Their sexual lives will be exhibited. There's a shame to it. So generally, we are a patriarchal society. I'm not saying it's the media that's created that, but the media does go some way in amplifying that and further reinforcing it, which is terrible given they have the opportunity to actually change that. So even with the programming that we have and the sort of rhetoric of sponsor and the media further, you know, pushing that. But also women as a society... Is it
rhetoric or is it reality?
There's an element of reality, but if you amplify it and choose it to frame it that way, and then you don't focus on women who are doing well, and you don't focus on women who are in academia, and you don't focus on women who are professors, but you instead, you know, showcase all these stories of sponsors and so on, then that is what is normalized. So you can shape society that way. You can choose what aspects or, you know, what groups of women you want to focus on. So the media has a role to play. I don't think it's single-handedly responsible for the attitudes towards women. I think women have a role to play as well in the way we respect ourselves and what we choose to express of ourselves. And young girls, of course, there's a moral degeneration of our society. That's what's happening. We're ingesting a lot of foreign media as well, which is informing their values in terms of you know, whether it's how they dress or what their priorities are, what their values are. So we need to take all those things into account. But media does have a role. I think it can reverse things gradually. Most importantly, well, for me, what I've been advocating for is for media to normalize leadership in women. Yeah. And he said sometimes he calls women and they don't come on because there's not enough women coming on. So it's a little bit scary and daunting for women to come on. Yes. And then, of course, the bashing that goes on afterwards. With women, people tend to focus not too much on the content and the substance of what they have to say, but it goes into looks.
The bashing from the public or the bashing from...
if a woman is, say, on TV, you'll find if somebody disagrees with a person, they don't go into the content, they get ad hominem. So it's about what you dressed in, what your hair looks like. Whereas with Kerichia, nobody would ever say anything with regards to what, not that there's anything wrong with how
but
you
would
look.
that be controlled by the media though? That's up to...
No, that's what I'm saying. And that's now why women are afraid or reluctant to go on. But if we keep having women on and bringing women with content and substance, then we normalize it and more women will want to come on.
Right.
Because also, when we tell women, we're encouraging with a 2/3 gender rule, we're also trying to encourage women to put themselves up for elective posts.
Yes.
But how can you be what you can't see? We never see women aspiring to leadership. And this is why I agitate for JKL or Jeff to bring women to discuss politics, show other women that politics is possible. Yeah.
And Ohito, let's not say that the women are not available. Women are there.
They're
if you work
available.
harder, I'll tell you, it's about media houses not looking, for them. And it's not just about women. Look at all the shows, the discussion panels. It's usually the same men we are seeing all the time, and you wonder, what else are they saying differently today?
Yes.
So if you're looking for those women, I'll tell you, you will find them. Talk to Amway, for example.
To appear on the TV, we'll bring them on
Talk
board.
to Amway.
But
David,
I just wanted to say, Mark, that I think Pope Francis added a spin to this gender debate today when he directed Catholic priests that the sin of abortion is pardonable now.
Well, Mark, as
been
we
loaded.
talk about, women and empowerment, it's also good to point out that they also have a role to play.
Of course.
I can't forget the vetting of the TCJ, Philomena Mwilu, as it was happening in Parliament. I think because the men thought maybe it was not their affair, they largely left Parliament. And so questions that were being thrown was one after another by women. And 80% of the people were tearing her down completely. And at some point we were watching the TV in the newsroom and we said, what's going on? All the women were just trying to demolish her. And, she got the job. But I think people should also have some retrospection and soul searching and ask themselves, why was that? Here is a very important position that is about to be taken by this judge. And all they could think about was to show how she is unfit for it.
Right.
But the issue that I think Ohito mentioned about the leadership in newsrooms is a very key one that has very long-term ramifications.
Yes.
We have very few women in leadership. If you have an editorial meeting of 12 people and they are supposed to be 1 or 2 women, before they come in and you have the whole group of men, chances are somebody will probably crack a dirty joke.
Yes.
And laugh and say, but when the lady comes, everybody will behave. It doesn't mean they're sexist. It's just the nature of the newsroom.
Right.
Could we encourage more women to stay longer in newsrooms? Some stay and then after a while they decide, oh, this job is a bit too hectic, let me go into public relations. Then they leave and join a bank as a PR manager. Yes. Some decide for one reason or another that they cannot stay on. Few of them go into academia.
But to be honest, also the platform, not platform, but really the routine isn't favorable for many. I have colleagues who say it's not favorable for me, as especially I'm looking forward to having a family. And this is not to say you can't handle it. It's just the reality of it. They say, especially when you see someone phasing out of the media sector, it's normally when they want to focus on the family.
Although I don't believe that family and journalism are incompatible.
Right.
You can still raise a family and still be in journalism.
Very true.
And if that is not fixed, you will have a situation where men will continue dominating media houses for a long time to come. So there must be affirmative action.
Pamela, let's explore some options on how to change this trend, because we have to take a break. As you can hear, my director is hinting at me that I need to take a break.
Much as we are saying that, women need to be also part of the change that we are looking for, it's about the timings, even for this program, Mark. You know that it's difficult to get women to come here. And let's try and understand, what are women doing at this time of the night? And what are men doing at this time of the night? And how secure, we all care about our security, yes.
It's true.
You don't know where I'm going tonight. And I came to this show because somebody needs to come to this show.
Right.
And represent the views of women. So really, the timings, Kerich, much as we say that we need more women in the media houses, they would like to be there, but it's not made possible.
All right. Perhaps to clarify then, Pamela, in your point of changing the timings in the environment, and to respond to her view?
Yeah, I would be for it. I mean, Mark, this show used to come at 8 o'clock. And that time, I'm sure you didn't have such a problem getting women. And whatever it is that we say, we must remember again, this is a society, we live in this society that has these perceptions about women. You mentioned about cultural, even when you were sitting at home and, you know, Ohito, you said your wife is there, somebody may ask you, I mean, why is she out at work at this time? So we're changing gradually, but that gradual has to also bear in mind the context you are living in at the moment. So let's be accommodative. I think that is what I would go for, because then it allows all of us to engage. It gives us an opportunity to be part of the conversation. But let's not forget also that women are willing. What I would call upon is really let's look for them. We may get those women who are willing to come at this time, and I'm saying we are not short of them. If the media could do a little more, if journalists could do a little more work.
A little more work on our part, David, and in your experience, you know, practical to expect someone to be here at this late hour, in your experience?
I must commend Prince Pass today. He scored 50-50. So, and I'm very proud that one of the competent camera persons I can see from where I'm seated is a lady. And that shows you that newsrooms are willing to change. It's just that if we can get the right people into the right jobs, then as Jerry says, let them have the opportunity. Let's not look at them that they're going to breastfeed and so on. And in any case, how many times does one breastfeed in a career?
That's true.
Perhaps twice or thrice.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And Kerich, now back to the issue of the complaints that have been, especially this week, but moving forward, if someone has a complaint, you know, on an issue that they feel was not handled well or ethically, what's the channel and what's the course that they should follow? And start us by, you know, what has been brought your way in terms of media counsel.
Yeah, recently we have received quite a number of complaints. Anybody with a complaint can channel it to the Media Council of Kenya, which will then forward it to the Complaints Commission of the Media Council. The new act, the new law, the Media Act, actually allows for people to complain directly to the Complaints Commission, which can then take it up. Don't forget that the Media Council itself can generate a complaint if it feels that there's an issue of sufficient public interest and nobody has complained, in which case then it would become a party in the dispute, but which will be handled by the Complaints Commission. But, you know, process must be followed. However emotive an issue is, there still is a process that has to be followed, which is you complain, and then the Complaints Commission will write to the party complained against. The party complained against will respond, and depending on their response, then the process will proceed from there. Like I said in the past, sometimes somebody wants arbitration to just sit. Sometimes it's mediation, to sit to the offending party and say, why did you do what you did? Maybe they don't want to take it further than that. Somebody else says, let's take it to the absolute logical conclusion. But when a complaint is received, remember, the Complaints Commission is new and has been away for 2.5 years. So we have other cases that have also been pending. So it's not possible to say that because this one is so emotive, you must put everything aside and deal with this one first. Of course, it must be pointed out that for this period when the cases had been put on hold, it is now necessary to call all the parties, take new dates and say, when can we revisit this issue and so on. So it is possible that one of the new complaints could then get an early hearing if the old ones cannot agree on a date quickly. But I don't think people should expect and say, how comes, you know, we saw a complaint filed by this big government official and it has not been resolved yet. It's because a complaint by a policeman or a complaint by a priest is just as important as a complaint by a government body.
Perhaps the motivating factor here would be, as we always talk about corruption, that, you know, if only we would see, you know, heads rolling. So are there cases where people have actually been punished, stations have been punished?
Several.
And you know, brought to book?
Yes, including the Star newspaper.
Yes.
Which was one of the cases, actually about the only case we've lost. where the current president complained about an article that we published, written by a late columnist who was not a member of staff of the newspaper, but used to contribute articles. But the fact that it was in our platform, therefore required that we take responsibility.
Right.
And what happens is the Complaints Commission will then make a judgment. They can order you to publish an apology, and in a certain manner, because we know that if you don't prescribe the manner to newspapers, they will put 2 paragraphs in page 34 that nobody will see. But whereas the person complaining will say, you put me on page 1, on the side of page 1. That is where I want my apology to be.
Yes.
So the Complaints Commission is actually able to say that you must put this apology in this particular location, and even agree on the wordings with the person who had complained.
Yes.
So many times there have been rulings where media houses have been told to publish an apology. Sometimes they have even been fined because the law allows for that to happen. So indeed there is a process that takes place, and it is quite elaborate, but it is designed to achieve results that are satisfactory to all parties.
Okay.
I'm not saying it takes too long because that would discourage people from filing, but maybe we should get people who have successfully gone through the Complaints Commission to then be able to tell others that this
actually works.
was my experience.
Right. Pamela, someone says here, Mwangi Kamithi says, women need to occupy their positions without waiting for pity, and men should allow those who are courageous to flourish. In terms of you asking for an accommodative or convenient environment.
Asking for accommodative doesn't mean we are asking to be pitied. It just means that we have women who are worth those positions of leadership, and we have them. We have examples of women in this country who have led. I mean, just think of women like the late Professor Wangari Maathai. Think in terms of Martha Karua. We have women in this country who really have shown leadership at its best. And we are constantly working with women in this country. We have the highest number ever in parliament because of the work that has been done by lots of people in this country, lots of organizations, media houses, I would say even journalists, to some extent. We've been working very closely with them as the Association of Media Men in Kenya. And we're saying that let's make an effort as journalists to give them the platform and portray them positively. Because we've heard that journalists will just find whatever little fault perceived or obvious and make it an issue of discussion when it's not there at all.
Right.
So let's give an equal platform.
Moving forward, and this is to David because you mentioned something in this line as to what should the media do to manage or bring to book or actually just muzzle some of these characters that are loose cannons. Phil Mwangi says the media needs to black out leaders who are known to spit venom recklessly. We're going into 2017, whether it's a woman or a man, and whether they're going up against each other in terms of aspirants. Is this really going to be a practical channel to deal with them?
Let me explain to viewers that there are programs that are live like this one.
Yes.
It's almost impossible for the moderator to imagine what I'm going to utter next. And we only ask those panelists who come to the shows that they must be people of integrity. As Chair said, it's about leadership, let's exhibit things that are in tandem with Chapter 6 of the Constitution, so that you don't put editors and journalists into a lot of trouble. And then 2, there's the second challenge, which is so many live shows now. Yesterday there were 2 concurrently, one in Mombasa, one in Bomet. And when you sit down, you wonder where the country is headed to. It's also impossible for, the journalists to moderate and even try and muzzle. We don't want to muzzle the politicians, but we are asking them to rise to occasion, let them issuefy their debates. There are so many things that you can talk about this beautiful country that Kenya is. We can end corruption by providing solutions, A, B, C, D, rather than personal attacks and taking the debate below the table and leaving our children who are now home wondering, is this how our parents going to lead us forward?
Right. Charles, in terms of monitoring, you're in that body that monitors all the media houses, and he speaks of live environments where people will speak. There's been the solution of, you know, delay, 5 seconds delay, so you can at least catch something if it is said and it's out of line. But you've also spoken about us showing what is part of the society, what the politicians are saying, and let the public deduce for themselves, or, you know, just consume it, digest what they have been told or what they hear.
Now, you know, the primary responsibility for the content that goes out there is with the individual media house. Not
Even with the
MCK.
disclaimer where we say the views
Exactly.
showed it,
If
and that's
somebody
actually was
comes
in the...
on a live rally and says, everybody buy a panga because we must chase this community out of here, that is unacceptable. And you cannot provide a forum for somebody like that to continue inciting violence that might lead to
But you
death.
simply can't imagine what he's
You
going
can
to say.
switch it off.
Absolutely.
You can switch it off. Because he might utter 2 words or 3 words, but once you see the direction somebody is taking, if it is completely unacceptable, just switch it off.
But
And
let me
wait, because
remind-
it is live, when the person stops his vitriol, you can then go back.
So let me remind Chair that we are living in a digital era, and expecting the journalists to do all the policing and gatekeeping is out of place. It's not practical anymore. By just what you can record with your phone, the TVs might be switched off. It will go to a bigger audience online. How do you deal with that?
Let me
That-
explain
that
to you
is
how you
what
deal
we
with
are
that.
saying. Yeah.
Number one, every show that is live has a producer and a director.
Sure.
And you must be able then to curtail anything that might be inciting or unacceptable. If somebody records the rally with his phone and shares it to social media, now that is a completely different platform altogether.
Yes.
And social media is another animal that nobody has figured out how to control. But we are saying a media house operating on a license issued in trust by the public should control its content. Whatever happens in social media, we then as a country need to discuss and say,
What I'm
how do you
trying-
then deal with this
What
one?
I'm trying just to tell the chairman, and which is why we will come gladly before the commission to defend ourselves, is that we took off the content online. But guys who had smart recording systems
Yes.
have put it back. We have no control of YouTube. We have no control of social media. And they're plagiarizing our content.
Nobody's going to hold you responsible for things that are
But
in social
doesn't the
media.
disclaimer as well
But
hold?
look at the damage it's doing to the profession, to the media house, to the brands that are very professional.
Let's say it's also got a lot to do with the show moderators, you know, not just for that show, but across the board. It could be radio, it can be wherever. I mean, the moderator should take charge of a program. And if you did that, that wouldn't have happened at all.
But as things stand right now, Hito, I must tell you that trying to control social media is a solution that we will probably find in some years to come.
Right.
Not at the moment. So you do your part as a media house.
Yes.
Whatever is happening in social media, you know, I don't know. Maybe
Well, there has
CA
been,
and
there
the
has
rest
been
will
the accusation that, you know, we invite people knowingly because of what they'll say because of ratings. And this is not just KTN. This is NTV. We know if we bring someone here, he will say 1 or 2 things and balance him out with someone else, and they'll be able to square it out and have a good show, a fiery show that is lit, as they would say on social media. You know, would you confess to this?
Well, we must see media houses as business enterprises. We are not public broadcasters funded by taxpayers. And the question of rating is a global phenomenon. We
Right.
cannot run away from it. Who doesn't want a good show? Which is why people are watching Trespass now, because your ratings are up there. But that does not mean that we take that good platform, because the frequencies, these are public resources that we are using. We must use them responsibly and practice journalism following the ethics and the very high standards of practice.
Right, right. I mean, Jerry, you've been quiet here, and I don't know if you have any thoughts in terms of the accusations towards prioritizing the ratings. You follow all the shows, I'm sure, whether it's Opinion Court on Citizen or, you know, any other show on K24, KBC.
Okay, I think KTN cannot absolve themselves from responsibility by a simple disclaimer. They provided the platform, so I think they do have a lot to answer for with regards to the show that took
But you
place.
do agree that in a live environment, things happen that you can't quite, predict.
You can stop the show. And also, I'll be totally honest, Jeff Koinange was getting out of hand. The show was becoming so sensationalist in that people were becoming offended, what he did with Boniface Mwangi. So people do expect that to a certain extent. So it's something that the channel that's airing his show should be aware of, that it can get out of hand.
Right.
So I think they do have a responsibility. A disclaimer doesn't then say, it's like you putting an advert in your paper tomorrow and saying, well, it's not really us. It's running in your paper, so you've got to take responsibility.
Is this about the disclaimer?
Yeah. But I'm also trying to point out what Ohito is saying is right. There's nothing wrong with trying to get good ratings.
Right.
So long as you do it within acceptable parameters.
I think
Everybody
you have to be ethical
expects
about it.
to have good ratings.
Yes.
There was a beautiful show I watched, and unfortunately it wasn't for some people, where one of the stations invited the Eritrean and the Ethiopian ambassador
It's KTN.
for a debate, and then it turned into a circus, and it was quite interesting to watch what happened. Now they would not have known that these people were going to go for one another's
Or
next
probably they would,
on the
because
show.
this is Eritrea and Ethiopia.
Oh, maybe they would, because if you invite the Indian and the Pakistani ambassador to talk about Kashmir,
Yes.
you might expect that. Or the Moroccan and the Algerian ambassador
But
to
there's
talk about
nothing wrong to go
Western
for
Sahara.
the ratings. as
Yeah,
you say.
but there's nothing wrong to go for the ratings if you're operating within ethical parameters.
Pamela, as Amwick, do you agree with this?
Absolutely not. I mean, let's really be sensitive. That is what I'm calling upon myself as a representative of women in the media or women in this country. We are talking about not using the media platform to give undue advantage to some over others, to disparage women, really. I mean, because we are seeing that happening a lot. And I will say again and again that journalists, let's be sensitive. At the same time, as far as ratings go, you can get those ratings by inviting other people. We don't need the same people every now and then talking the same thing, and they really have nothing much to add. That's what we are saying. The viewer today or the listener is a very intelligent person.
Right.
And that's why I say sometimes people might just switch off. And people switch off, they say, oh, that person again. I mean, I'm not watching it. So sometimes you think it's raising the ratings, and maybe it's not. And it's about doing a little more work for journalists.
Okay.
I'm emphasizing on that.
And as we wind up, Jerry, you look like you're dozing off. You're probably focusing on your winding up comment, but this is a winding up comment because it's something you brought up initially. I mean, now you call yourself Mama Bora, and you have some political aspirations. We're going into 2017, where people will frame certain things in certain ways. This is in no way support to your political aspirations. This is, you say you're running for Langata. You haven't declared under which party, but I think it's common knowledge now. But in terms of the framing, your desire for equitable, not equity. I'm still trying to get what you say, the differentiation between equity and equitable.
Equitable and equality.
Yes.
Equality is providing a level playing field for everybody. Equitable is filling in the plugs where the inequality is to bring up the other person, so to speak. So if somebody is short, you give them a higher stair to reach this other person.
So in covering women aspirants, women politicians, and all, and what
I think what the media needs to do is not personalize, which is what they tend to do. They get into the personality, the looks, the family, the social background of women a lot more. Women, in terms of their personal lives, they have to meet a much higher threshold.
Aren't these some of the questions that people are asking, though? Where is
People
she from?
can ask, but they don't ask the same of men. Is she married? You don't hear them asking about whether men are married when they're running.
Well, they ask
Does she
that.
have children? You don't hear. Not to
They
the
asked
same
that
extent.
of Njoroge, the CBK. The CBK.
No, okay, not to the same extent. And yeah, I think just women have to meet a higher threshold when it comes to their personal lives, and their looks as well will start coming into
But there's a
play, their
disclaimer when
sexual
you're running for
objectification.
office, you're public property in a way.
Absolutely, absolutely. But scrutinize my policies and my visions and my solutions. This is what I'm encouraging the media to do. in as much as you do with the male politicians. But what tends to happen is there's a bias to get to know the woman from a personal level, to get to scrutinize the woman's personal life a lot more. We have to meet a much higher threshold than men in terms of personal integrity. And I would encourage the media to give women a platform to discuss their policies as much as they do with men, and not attack them and
I'm not interrupting you.
sexualize them
I just
either.
want to invite him, in balance of that conversation, how personal we get even with the men. I mean,
and
we
not
had,
to sexualize them. We tend to sexualize women. When I said I was running, the first thing that was talked about is maybe my color or my looks, which was such a shame because I've got such good ideas. They wouldn't do the same with a male aspirant.
we get quite personal with men.
Not to that extent. We've never had a sort of list of the most good-looking male aspirants. You get that immediately with women, or
Male
this
politicians
woman,
actually have been, yes. The Balalas and then the Kalonzos, we actually had it
on
in the-
occasion, but it's not the
Johors,
running
you know.
theme. It's not the running thread. So on occasion you do.
Right.
But women also, to a certain extent, do sexualize themselves, and they do use that to sell themselves. So maybe we're not doing ourselves any favors as well. Maybe we're doing ourselves a disservice when we use certain language in terms of our slogans to appeal to the youth. So sometimes we do the sexualization
Before Hito
ourselves.
comes in, let me say that for the women tuned in, I mean, let's use the positions, the platforms, to just say exactly what we are bringing on board, and not get into these fights with whoever else could be on the, on the show with us. That this is time that can be well spent because it doesn't come very often. Make the best of it. Don't get into fights on the.
For those who
the
are
show.
getting into politics as well, though, you've even said, you've acknowledged it. Politics is dirty.
It is.
So even as you go into politics, it's not quite onto just the media for getting into that kind of personal area of your life.
Well, the media will amplify what the opponents are saying. So what we're saying is be careful with how you frame things. We don't need to amplify the negative in terms of the sexualization of women. I think that's one of my biggest fears with going into politics, the sexualization of women. Right. And I think we do ourselves a disservice as women because we do sometimes add to it and use, sex to sell, sadly. Right. Sorry to be so frank.
Okay. And Ohito, in your comments as well as we wrap up, also, just to clarify on this particular issue that regards the show that was, but also to the wider industry.
I think there are quite a number of lessons learned so far, and I think getting into elections, I stick with issification of campaigns. Let's get the debate. If it's about Nairobi City, how can we make Nairobi great again, if I may use somebody's words? And, what are the services that we need to offer the residents of this city, the visitors, the tourists, and so on? How can we secure town? How can we get enough water for every other mouth that needs it, so that we have a functional town that you don't have to take 3 hours on a traffic stretch of 4 kilometers. Those are the issues that we need to start addressing rather than personal attacks on this. I know it will be very difficult for my colleagues in the media. We have a country that is very polarized and biased in some ways against the good thinking women. But I want to remind viewers that in the list of those who have been mentioned in corruption, there are just less than 2 out of 10 maybe women. So you have a better bet.
Let me
yes. Are you responding to something he's brought up?
I want to add to
then I'll
something
give
when
Charles
he talks
an
about the
opportunity.
biases, which is, it's really at the crux of the problem with society, a patriarchal society. There's a lot of biases against women. So when women have leadership qualities like assertiveness, decisiveness, and so on, they're viewed as aggressive and bossy. When men have exactly the same qualities, they're viewed as decisive and they're the boss. Similarly, we have a bias, an unconscious bias within us, where when a woman speaks for exactly the same amount as a man, the woman will be perceived to have spoken for a lot longer. And these are the things, this is true. And these are the things we need to start changing, to start accepting that women can be assertive and it's not a bad thing. If I act in exactly the same manner as a man, mine is perceived to be a lot more negative than what the man did. In that women are expected to be demure as well. We need to get out of that sort of thinking. The world is transitioning. Women are going into work and women are going into corporate positions and so on. So we need to get out of this framing that, you know, this box we've put a woman into, that you're supposed to be demure. So if you're assertive, you're not woman enough and you're being bossy. So some of those biases, they do work against us.
But this sounds very idealistic if indeed, as you say, we're in a patriarchal society. And the
But that's a
media,
construct, so it can be deconstructed.
Yeah, and the media actually portrays or, you know, mirrors the society.
No, no, it's a construct. The patriarchy is a construct, so it can be deconstructed. I'm not saying it will happen tomorrow,
Yes.
but gradually, and the media has a role to play in that.
Well, first, let me, before I forget, thank Ohito, who has taught me 2 new words today. One is issuefy, the other one is the issueification of debates. Whether it's proper grammar, I don't know. I will find out. But I have learned new things today.
Speaking of which,
But,
we can have ratings on issue-fied discussions, right?
I don't think that's a word that I can use easily. It sounds like NGO language. But
No, it's not.
in the past, many media houses have had deliberate policies to promote women. And when the elections come around, there are many who say that because of the history of being disadvantaged, we will give every woman capable leader space. And let's not forget that when we talk about the gender issues and behave as if the media is always out there bashing women. Yet it is the platforms that they have deliberately created that has allowed many of the women to rise up.
Yes.
Of course, even out of elective positions, one of the stations has had a long-running show called Strength of a Woman, which would go out and look for positive stories about
actually
women.
even
So,
here as
so
well.
we've had a lot of positive stuff. So let's not bash too much. And going forward, I think this is still necessary. Why? We have adopted the system of devolution that is proving to be very expensive. We have very many elected leaders. We have MCAs that are more than 1,000, and you know the payroll in government is impossible. I am of the firm view that if we could elect 40% of women to parliament, we would not even need the position of women rep, which is one of the affirmative action positions that was created. It was created because we are not meeting the minimum 1/3. But if they could actually win positions to create a good critical mass, then we can even begin to ask whether it is necessary to have these very expensive structures of so many MPs.
Right.
So I think going forward, the media has been very kind to women contesting, and I think I don't see any change in that. And of course, we also added people with disabilities as people who need special affirmative action.
Yes.
You know, because they are not able to compete on the same playing ground as able-bodied people. But talking about aggressive and assertiveness, there indeed are women who are very aggressive and assertive. I know one, if she sat here today, who is running for governor. Before you ask any question, she would look at you and say, ask if you dare. so indeed, they exist. But of course, it doesn't mean then that you should regard everybody that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And my director is saying Twende Home Sasa, but Pamela, you have to give your closing remarks
Yes.
in terms of media's role in deconstructing the patriarchal structure.
I don't know whether the last statement by Chairman Kerichia is that which goes to show assertiveness, you know. But let's say this. The media has done a lot to promote women. A lot is being done by various organizations, like I said, and individuals, because we are saying we need those numbers in parliament, not just in parliament, but all elective positions. So let's keep working together. Let's acknowledge where the mistakes are, because they are there, and let's, as media houses, make it our responsibility to train or caution our journalists.
Yes.
To be fair in their reporting, to be sensitive in their reporting. Because as much as journalists have promoted women, we know that they are also not being very fair to women. And we are saying, as people in this country, as women of this country, let's use the platforms that are available, but we would want to work more closely with journalists who understand what women stand for, because women, again, are not there for pity.
Right.
We have serious women who have led this country. We have women like Jerry here who have something to offer to the electorate. But let's give them a chance. Just today, a woman from Kibera also called me because she wanted our association to assist her because she's encountering the same issues you are raising. She's seeking a position as an MCA. And we are saying that is coming too early.
Right.
It's time we supported these women.
All right. Thank you very much, Pamela Mburia. Thank you, Charles Kerich. Thank you, Njeri Thorne. Thank you, David Ohito. And especially this conversation coming on a week that the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence starts. We've been looking at the framing and also the biases that could be seen within media platforms across the board. It's not about Jeff Koinange. It's not about KTN. It's about NTV. It's about Citizen. It's about KBC. All the media houses, I can't name them all because my director will get mad with me on time, but I have to mention this and clarify this. This is John Karanja in the spirit of being clear and being respectful. You say, I can see Mark is doing well in selling Jerry to Lang'ata voters. I hope hata kusahau akianza kuendesha Prado ya MPigs. Actually, just to be very clear, Bwana John, no, I'm not promoting her. The reason I bring it out is to actually inform why it is that she brings arguments, some of the arguments that she brings on, and it helps you understand where her perspective is coming from, especially when it is a government against opposition issue. Now you know. Sijalipwa chochote, sitapokea chochote, ile nitapokea ni mwisho wa mwezi. And thank you very much for your patience. Thank you to my team here and the kind lady behind this camera right here. If you could probably just get a shot of her in appreciation of her work and staying on quite late. You can wave to the people. There she is. Thank you very much. And to my director for being a bit patient with me. This Press Pass, it ends here, but we'll be back next week with more issue-fied discussions. Thank you for that word.